Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Organizing in the Time of COVID. My name is Firoz Manji from Daraja Press. Today, we have my guest is today is Chandra Mohan, who is a Dalit Indian poet, short story writer, and a social critique based in South Indian state of Kerala. He was in the past pursuing a career in mathematics, apart from being a translator, editor, and social activist, but now wants to commit his time to literary work. His poetry collections, Warscape Verses and the Letters to Namdeo Dasai, were shortlisted for the Srinivas Rayapral Poetry Prize and the Harish Govind Memorial Prize. And in 2016, uh, Outlook magazine listed him as a Dalit Achiever of the Year. I'll be discussing, amongst other things, his new book, shortly to come out, Love After Babel, published by Daraja Press. This comes out at a time when the COVID crisis, in which the Dalit people long exploited in the press, face serious threats in India. We will be speaking to him from Kerala. As Suraj Yangde, inaugural postdoctoral fellow at the Institute, at the Initiative for Institutional Anti-Racism and Accountability at the Shorenson Center for Media Politics and Public Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School, wrote, "Love After Babel is a book not to miss. It is a highly charged political treatise, best told in the language no other form uh, could match, and that is poetry." Love After Babel is available from Daraja Press in I hope in a short time. I'm very pleased, therefore, to have you with us, Chandra Mohan. Welcome to Organizing in the Time of Chaos.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so tell me, taking a couple of lines from a poem you wrote. You say, "They ask me, why do you write poems? I write poems. The people have a right to bear arms." What were you trying to convey there?
I think I'm trying to convey the urgency of the situation, the urgency of a situation in which literature has to become, literature has to become an important weapon in the hands of the marginalized. It talks about the lack of privilege for a poet from the marginalized communities to engage with poetry as merely an art form, It talks about the choices we have, the which also become the opportunity sort of thing that a writer from the marginalized is is forced into. It shows, like, for example, I don't know, people who are hitherto denied these opportunities, when they enter this art form, I would believe this art form would radicalize. This art form would, what is it? We'll get a fresh dialysis sort of thing. He'll get fresh blood into his veins when new ideas, new perspectives are suffused into it. So it is that form of that predicament, that lack of choice, that situation in which anything that can be of use is being used. Yeah.
Right,
Thank you.
right. Uh, so you describe yourself as a Dalit Indian poet. Um, Many of us have heard of the term Dalit, but can you tell us what that means? What what is
Yeah.
that?
So I believe the word Dalit was coined by the social reformer Jyotiba Phule in the 19th century in southern India. But this the over a period of time, just like an avalanche picks up snow, just like just like a glacier or something picks up snow and becomes an avalanche. This word has acquired various politically charged connotations over the last few decades. So this term Dalit is a term of self-identification by people who are at the lowest rung of the caste society in India. And this word is like, people say it very poetically that people who are culturally inferiorized, who are economically impoverished, who are politically disenfranchised. These are the people who are today designated as Dalit. But there's a difference between the term scheduled caste and Dalit. So scheduled caste would mean is what the state calls us. Dalit is a politically charged slogan or a word that was coined by the activists themselves and has a very subversive connotation to it. Secondly, this word helps these former untouchables across India, across South Asia, or globally, including the diaspora, to unite in the form of a unite inspired by the shared experiences they may have undergone. So this word builds in unity. This word builds in a platform for cooperation against fascism. This word builds in uh, a nomenclature under which we can enumerate our political perspectives. So in that way, it's something that has uh, that has uh, that has found its way into the Oxford Dictionary, and it has been coined by by the Dalits themselves.
Right. So um, you've spoken about the term as someone who is politically disenfranchised, culturally interiorized, and economically impoverished. That definition could embrace a huge sector a huge majority indeed of humanity who have been uh, dehumanized by capitalism. Um, do you see that term then embracing all these people?
Exactly. So there are definitions of Dalits in terms of who are denoted by it, but I think the most common definition is that they are former untouchables. That's one definition. Secondly, there is a very uh, kind of functional representation given to the Dalit in the form that those who were excluded from the act of history writing, you know, those of us who did not have our voice registered in the portals of history
Mhm.
are often designated as Dalit in the South Asian context. But for my audience who are not so familiar with South Asia, I would suggest that the word Dalit would roughly, correspond to the Afro-American identity in America or the Native American identity in America or the Western Hemisphere. So the quote-unquote black, the quote-unquote negritude folks who
Right.
struggle against racism, capitalism, and all other forms of social, economic, and cultural inequity. Dalits are the South Asian stand of it.
So you feel that uh, your experiences as a Dalit in India gives you a unique perspective that speaks to the oppressed everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. It gives us. So what happens is, we are exposed to we are exposed to the we get first-hand experience of social exclusion. We get first-hand experiences of denial of basic human rights. We get first-hand experience of you know of puppets. So this gives a unique epistemological privilege. I call the term epistemological privilege, in which these are channelized into works of art or newer notions of social justice, which a privileged person may not articulate.
Right. So so Love After Babel, your forthcoming book. Uh, why Love After Babel?
So if I should explain this project of mine, so I have recently observed that Dalit literature, studies about Dalits done by upper castes, or literature on on Dalits written by ourselves, which is termed as Dalit literature, is a fad in the academia. So universities worldwide, even in the Americas. So for example, the Columbia University has all of Ambedkar's writings online, free online in their archives. Globally, Dalit literature is taught in translation. Globally, Dalit literature is taught in translation. That is, it's delivered in the English language, and these authors happen to write these texts. Malayalam,
Chandramohan, you're breaking up a little.
Okay. So I'll repeat the
please,
sentence.
Please.
Yeah. So thing is, Dalit literature is a fad in the academia. Universities teach Dalit literature, but in translation. That is, they are taught in translation. So these writers who are Dalit writers write in Malayalam, Tamil, Hindi, whichever language which is their like mother tongue. So and a translator who may or may not be from the community, and it's no fault of him. Okay, translates these into English, which are now in the syllabus, and people deliberate upon it. So, but the new generation of Dalit thinkers have tried to problematize, critique, deconstruct this commodification of Dalit literature. They're trying to deconstruct the act of translation and see if this act of translation has inbuilt violence in it. So are we becoming like, are we being tamed by the market? Is market using us as mere guinea pigs? It's like, is these questions or the cultural asymmetry in the act of translation, the violence that could be inflicted on the soul of a Native American or Afro-American or a Dalit or a Roma person in all of Europe, can I capture this? So Love After Babel is very subset of poems in this collection, which are under the title Love After Babel. This is my attempt to engage with this pressing question.
Right. So it is about the violence of translation then that preoccupies you. So perhaps you can share with our listeners the principal themes that you've covered in this book.
Yeah, the principal themes that I've covered are that, so I try to draw in metaphors to say that what is a well-rounded word, which encapsulates Dalit anger, the subversive, dynamite of thought may become a, pear-shaped sagging cliche when translated. So that's from a subsection of a poem. That's one thing. Secondly, I'm also worried about the gender dynamics involved in caste, and how a lot of languages are inherently sexist. That's another theme I try to explore. Also try to explore the pressing need for a Dalit writer to be aesthetically pleasing. So Dalit writers, when they talk about their life experiences, there is an added pressure on him to prove that he has a certain command over language, imagery, and whatnot, all literary forms, so that he qualifies as a writer from the perspective of in the gaze of the mainstream media, in the gaze of the mainstream literary establishment. Now, these conflicting, competing, aspects of a writer, maneuvering in a very capitalistic, casteist, racist world are my themes in Love After Babel.
Right, and you also pay tribute to the Black Panthers. Help us understand that connection.
Exactly. So that's very interesting. So there was a friend of mine in America who happens to be an Afro-American. The last chapter of Black Panthers is Dalit Panthers. The last chapter of Black Panthers is Dalit Panthers. So there was this organization named Dalit Panthers founded in Mumbai, that is founded in Maharashtra in the year 1972. like building on the ideals, extending the ideals of the Black Panthers, the revolutionary militant outfit, Black Panthers that we all know. So it is this history of shared struggles. It is this history of shared struggles that I try to capture in the long poem, learning from the Panthers. So it literally, it's generally said that the Dalits of India did have their emancipatory praxis sort of borrowed from Afro-Americans, who in turn learned a lot from the Caribbeans. People say the Caribbean blacks of the Caribbean, they coined negritude. The francophone black world coined the word negritude, and that results in an explosion of ideas. It results in a very extremely powerful poetry and cultural session. So what we learn from the Caribbean, what the uh, Afro Americans learn from the Caribbean, the Dalits learn from them. So it is this shared history of struggle and acknowledgement that I try to make, that I try to do in the poem, learning from the Panthers, which is a longish poem in this collection.
But what is interesting is that you also you're also dealing with the whole issue of gender oppression, of the oppression of women, the exploitation of women. In your poems, for example, 13 Ways of Looking at a Black Bikini. And you combine this with a critique of how Islamophobia has been developed. So tell us more about why you chose to deal with those issues.
Yeah. So I think why I chose to write on Islamophobia. So I'm very surprised that just like Dalit literature has been mainstreamized in India, just like the problem of casteism has found a voice and people are deliberating on it today. I find it very, very conspicuous that problems of Muslims, intense Islamophobia, the religious profiling by the law and military, the law as well as the police machinery here, the cops who religiously profile young Muslim men and are like branded as sources of as sources of evil, as like sources of sexual danger. How these people are like traumatized. So it is my attempt to engage with the other. It was my attempt to engage with the Muslim soul and like how they suffer the extreme of othering. So the Dalits in India, in spite of their extremely degrading condition, thankfully due to the constitution that was envisaged by Dr. Ambedkar and the visionaries during at the time of Indian independence, Dalits, in spite of their poverty and social exclusion, do not seem to suffer the kind of othering, the constant need to prove our loyalty to the nation, constant need to prove that we are not terrorists and whatever religious variance or whatever. This is missing in a Dalit community. So there is this extreme form of suffering and the kind of violence that the Muslims undergo in my part of the world that I've tried to sort of imbibe in my poems. I've tried to sort of resist in my poems. So and also I've been like an image of a guy with a beard who gets stopped at airports and other checkpoints, and who gets to be extra checked more for fewer more rounds of checking, and as if he's a potential, I don't know, source of collateral damage or whatever. This has intrigued me for a long time. I've seen that when people check my passport, people ask my full name. My full name doesn't, or my name, which is like Chandramohan, S, which is like the first letter of my father's name. These are not perceived as immediate dangers. So they may not even know that I'm Dalit unless I assert it, like I raise this issue and asserted myself. So there is this implicit sort of camouflage that I get of a relative anonymity on who is a Dalit. But this doesn't apply to a Muslim. Immediately your name, which is like Firoz or something, something. These names immediately they get pigeonholed as a Muslim, and all kinds of extreme forms of interrogation or whatever. You're under constant surveillance. This principle kicks in. So that is something that has intrigued me, and I intend to write a long. This is just a small excerpt from the the plans I have to that I have that I plan to write about the Muslim community. I think the state violence and state repression of Muslims is extremely like unbearable in Kerala, in India, wherever. So even the recent COVID violence has the coronavirus scare has only accentuated the problem. This virus has just morphed into an Islamophobic whatever virus or whatever you call it. So this shows how the inherent social fault lines they accentuate, they become more glaring in an hour of crisis. And secondly, most of the time it's generally said disparagingly that Dalit writers either talk about atrocities that Dalits have suffered or they talk about Ambedkar. They rarely try to build an intersectional, interdisciplinary perspective. So I've tried to, sort of transcend a certain kind of pigeonholing. Yeah, thank you.
I think you do that very well in this collection of
Yeah,
poems, and I love the idea of poetry being uh, uh, one of the tools we use in struggling against oppression and exploitation. Um, love in the time of Babel, love in the time of COVID, and indeed love in the time of Islamophobia. What a time to be writing. Um, might I persuade you to recite a poem for us? Uh,
yeah, yeah. I'll try my best. I'll try my best. Yeah, yeah.
are you still there?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just taking the poem. Like,
Okay.
okay, so can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So the poem goes, many hued lament on the quarantine times. The poem is titled Many Hued Lament on the Quarantined Times. So this is my poem written in response to the lockdown following the coronavirus scare.
Okay.
Number one, the ozone layer is healing. We stay indoors and mend its hole. The ozone layer is healing. We stay indoors and mend its hole. Second, in the autobiography of my corona days, the four walls of my room unfold into blank pages for me to write. I open the door only to open my mouth. I open the door only to open my mouth. Section 3. In my calendar, there is a string of red digits from mid March till we see light at the burning end of a cigarette. It's not an eternal Sunday. It is not an eternal Sunday. Section 4. This too shall pass. But for the time served, I seek parole to loiter the pages of the plague by Camus without learning any lessons. Section 5. In the story of my evolution, I backpedal a retreat into the shelters of self isolation and one arm distancing. Section 6. After getting tested, I saw the coordinates of the tip of an iceberg. Track the trail of your shadow if you contract the virus. Section 7. Exhaled panic may spread like wildfire. Quarantine the nightingale in your mouth. Exhaled panic may spread like wildfire. Quarantine the nightingale in your mouth. 8. The timeline of retreat of the virus is like the contours of a receding shadow. The darkness persists. Section 9. Break the chain like scissoring a Suez through the crowd. Section 10. The night sky is cleared of celestial debris. The swan has docked at a seaport. Thank you.
Wow, as they would say. This is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Let me just explore a comment you made just before you read that. It ties in, I think, and that is you said that what the coronavirus has done is exposed the contradictions, the divisions, uh, um, the nature of the society in rather than actually creating it. It has acted as a way of clearing our eyes to seeing what is there. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you are seeing in India in terms of the effects of the coronavirus?
So what happened in India? Like, what situation in India?
Yes, and what does
Yeah,
the
yeah,
coronavirus show about India?
yeah. So if you look at the situation in India, so I must admit that I'm pleasantly surprised that a country of 1.3 billion in a population of 1.3 billion, I think Corona up to now we are still, we are yet to see the worst or something like that. I don't know. The Western world, like even smaller countries, there are like deaths of a quarter lakh. People like 25,000 people have died due to coronavirus, but a country like India is relatively lesser. So maybe we missed the bus in a very very promising, in a very very like a pleasant shock. That's one thing. Secondly, uh, I kind of feel that this coronavirus has distracted us, in a way, distracted us. So there were massive protests against this current right wing dispensation in our country. So, for following the Citizenship Amendment Act, there were widespread protests that could have altered the course of immediate history, could have altered the course of this government and a possible regime change in the next 3 4 years, 4 years. So when all these have been whitewashed, all these has gone about.
I think you're
Like
breaking up again.
safe zones at home, and this is like a tremendous gamble or a lottery or a windfall of fortune for this government who are ruthlessly persecuting Dalits, minorities, sexual minorities, and and the poor. This government has given has opened up so
We're
protests
losing
have
you.
been.
We're losing you.
Hello.
The connection is not very
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I think it's like a massive opportunity of protest lost. It's like lost.
uh, we're losing connection. We're not hearing you very well.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
let's try again.
So I'll just repeat what I just said.
Yes, you
I'll
were
just repeat what I said.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can hear you fine. Maybe I don't know. Yeah. So the thing I'm trying to say is that the right-wing governments all over, especially in India, they were given the dissent. Right-wing governments of the world
I think.
to suppress dissent. Yeah.
Okay.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, this is better now.
Okay. Okay. So the situation in India is that uh, first of all, we're quite happy that it has not really become a pandemic in India yet compared to the West. But that's one thing.
I think we're losing you. I'm not sure the connection is
Okay.
particularly good.
Okay. So should we cut the call and should I reconnect? Like
Yes, let's try that. I'll have you.
okay. Okay. So I'll just cut this and
Okay. Apologies for that, but seems to be the mobile phone connection is rather poor. We'll try and get Chandramohan back on the line, and I hope that he'll be able to explain a little bit more about the way in which the coronavirus, the epidemic has revealed things
Me now?
about India. And that's much better.
Yeah. Very good, very good, very good.
So you were talking
Yeah, maybe
about
then you can repeat.
right wing.
Yeah, maybe then you can just repeat the question.
Yes, we're talking.
So I'll answer from the beginning.
You were talking about right wing government. You were talking about how the pandemic is revealed aspects of India's politics and the conditions of people in a way that was not as clear before.
That's true. That is true. So first of all, the government did get a huge windfall of opportunity to suppress dissent. You know, so people who were concentrating on protests, they had to retreat back home. That's one. That's the first major consequence. Second consequence is that this virus has morphed into Islamophobia. So the Muslims are falsely accused of being the root cause for this virus. You know, Muslim women, like when they visit hospitals, they are denied treatment. They die due to lack of medical treatment. You know, look at the extreme form of quote unquote untouchability practiced on Muslim community. So, and secondly, number three, a lot of migrant laborers in Kerala, in my part of the world, you know, where there are 30 lakh migrant laborers, they are stranded, like they can't go anywhere. Like the government, which is like, you know, a welfare state government, should do something to either take them back to their homes, wherever they have come from, or do the necessary, you know, civic amenities for them to survive. So the governments at the state and the central level, at the national level, they are a big failure when it comes to, you know, taking care of their working class population, migrant labor population. So these are the fault lines of the economy that are exposed. Fourthly, I would believe that a lot of the unorganized sector may never be able to bounce back in the coming years. It's like blood lost, and some kind of you know, it's like some kind of complications developed in the body due to excessive blood loss, you know, bleeding. And later on, we are in the hospital, and we've been like given lots of blood transfusion that may not set right what happened at that time. You know, so some irrevocable damage could be done to our souls, to our economy.
And are the policies of the Kerala government different from those of the national government?
Yeah. So the thing is, not that Kerala government is different. Kerala government is much more stricter. You know, it's a left-wing government. It's an activist sort of government with a lot of machinery. So they've been very strict and very I don't know the right word. They've been very stringent lockdown measures. Probably given some kind of respite. And secondly, quite lucky in the sense that, you know, we have not seen a community spread. We have not seen like, you know, this disease spread like wildfire up till now. There has just been 3 deaths in this 3.5 crore population state. So we've been quite lucky. So it's also true that traditionally, this state in India, this state had relatively better health facilities, higher you know, standards of living, higher life expectancy, better child mortality ratio, more women than men, which is like favorable sex ratio. It's a culmination of all these factors that result in a relatively better situation in my part of the world. And I'm grateful to history.
Right. Can I persuade you to recite us another poem?
Yeah.
The American Dream is on a ventilator.
Yeah.
I think it's a.
So I'll read that poem. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Just a second. So I'm just scrounging the WhatsApp, you know, to get this to get the PDF file. Yeah, so the poem goes, the American dream is on a ventilator. Section 1. There could be very painful 2 months ahead before we see some light with our own eyes. There could be very painful 2 months ahead before we see some light with our own eyes. Those of you waiting, Section 2. Those of you waiting for your green cards will have to first apply for citizenship in the kingdom of the well. Those of you waiting for your green cards will have to first apply for citizenship in the kingdom of the well. Section 3. The peak of the pandemic death graph resembles the hump of a camel. Please decipher the riddle. Section 4. If you sneeze or cough online, if infodemic may infect the rest of the world beyond any firewall. We are in a free fall. We are the epicenter of the crisis after the virus annexed our continent. Section 6. Triangulate a noose around the chain of the virus so as to tether it. Section 7. Decontaminate the stimulus package before injecting into the bloodstream of the nation. Section 8. Hubble telescope couldn't foresee this virus approaching us. Hubble telescope couldn't foresee this virus approaching us. The blood plasma can be shared beyond the shade of a family tree. The blood plasma can be shared beyond the family tree, beyond the shade of the family tree. So this last line is inspired from an observation during the Trump press briefings, in which there was a comment made by a doctor that those who have been cured of the virus, they can donate the plasma to people who are under treatment, and that will be like recovery will be much more easier. So I just worked on it. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Are there any particular messages you'd like to convey to those who are watching the show?
So I think that my message is that just think about the people around us. Think about people who are like living on wages, on daily wages. Think about people who may not afford. Like always think about our privileges and what others may not have. For example, we may stay at home, we may get good food at home. All these are privileges that a lot of people are denied. Now, we may use a hand sanitizer to wash our hands n number of times. We may have access to running water. We may have access to cleanliness, to effect cleanliness on our bodies. So these are not something a lot of people have. We can cultivate a soul in which we are aware of all this.
Thank you, Chandra Mohan. Thank you for sparing time to be on the show with us. I really appreciate your giving us your time, and for reading your wonderful poems. Just a reminder that those who are, would be interested, we hope that the Love After Babel and other poems by Chandra Mohan will be available shortly, and strongly encourage it. So there are some very passionate and politically powerful poetry to be found in this extraordinary collection. Thank you very much for being with us, Chandra Mohan. And
yeah, I feel very privileged. I'm so happy. I'm very privileged to be here. Thank you so much.
You are very kind. Thank you. You go well and look after yourself, and let's the struggle continue. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye. Wish you the same.
That was Chandra Mohan S., author of a number of books of poetry, including one that Dalit Press is about to publish, Love After Babel and Other Poems. You can find further details here on the URL shown, the link shown below. thank you very much for being with us on this show. And this afternoon we have another interview with Ajamu Dillahunt, who is an activist in North Carolina, who's been working with migrant workers as well as organizing around the whole issue of racism in in North Carolina and beyond in the USA. So I hope you will join us there in a few hours' time. This is Firoz Manji signing off on organizing in the time of COVID-19.